Welcome to Casual Politics, John Redwood. Thank you very much for accepting my request, and I'm very grateful to you. You need no introduction. You've been Member of Parliament since 1987. And the first question, exactly 20 years ago, in 1995, you forced John Major, the Prime Minister at the time, to tender his resignation, and then you stood against him in the leadership contest. So 20 years on, do you regret what you've done back then?
I didn't force him to tender his resignation at all. He volunteered his resignation and he created a vacancy for leader of my party. He said, put up or shut up, because I had been having private and sensible disagreements with him in Cabinet about whether we were going to join the Euro or not and what the economic policy should be. So I felt the only honest thing to do when he'd said we either had to take the argument public or no longer put that case in Cabinet was to put the argument in public, which I did. And I'm very pleased I did that because I think it produced the pledge from both John Major and, more importantly, from Tony Blair that the UK would not enter the Euro without the consent of the British people in a referendum. The British people are always more sensible on this issue than some of their political leaders. And so I think it's a very important part of saving the pound, which I think has done so much good for our country. We would be in a dreadful position now if we had been forced into the Euro.
But don't you think that you destabilised your party internally, which led to your party's defeat in 1997?
No, of course not. You're living in ancient history as well. So it's a long time ago. I'm living in the 21st century and I'm looking forward to the present Conservative government doing well and achieving some of the things I and my colleagues in the party want. But no, if you really need to go back over ancient history, what happened was that the polling for the Conservatives had collapsed thanks to John Major taking us into the exchange rate mechanism and thanks to that European currency scheme doing untold damage to the United Kingdom economy. And when we came out of the exchange rate mechanism, the public took their revenge and took the Conservative ratings in the polls way down. When I announced my alternative to John Major, we went up in the polls. When John Major won that contest, we went back down in the polls to exactly the level we were at before the contest. So I can assure you, my disagreement with John Major in public made absolutely no difference to the poll rating of the Conservative Party once the contest was over. During the contest, I actually put it up.
And back to the 21st century, as you just said it, how optimistic are you about David Cameron's renegotiations with his counterparts?
Well, I'm very optimistic about having a referendum, because for me it's a win-win. We could achieve all that I want by leaving the European Union, because I think the European Union is doing considerable damage to our capacity as a country, to our democracy, to our prosperity. But if by any chance David Cameron is able to persuade our partners in Europe to deal with the damage it's doing, then of course that would be very welcome.
But the Prime Minister has already said that the UK, Britain, if it leaves the European Union, it will not become a land of milk and honey. Do you agree with him?
No, I think we would have a very good future outside the European Union. I think we would be more prosperous. I mean, immediately we would be £10,000 million a year better off. That's £300 a year better off for every family in the country, which we could give by way of a tax rebate, or we could use it for additional public spending on public services. Well, that's the net contribution we make to the European Union, the money we send to them, which we don't get back. And at the same time, we could use the money which we currently send to them to get back to spend on all the causes that they currently spend on. So there'd be no damage to the universities and to the farmers, who are two of the main beneficiaries of getting some of our money back. We on the Leave side would say, any money you're currently getting from the European Union, the UK state will guarantee. We won't have to send it via Brussels. But all the other money which we send to the rest of Europe, we could give back to the taxpayers. So we're going to be £300 a family better off, which I think is a very good start. But more important even than money is we'd be more democratic, because at the moment, I have to say to my electors in Wokingham, there are quite a lot of things you want to change, but I can't change them for you, because they are illegal under European law. And I think a lot of my voters and constituents find that very difficult to accept. They say, but we're electing you to Parliament, if we want a law change, we want to get rid of the tampon tax, for example, why don't you just do it? And I have to say, well, because it's illegal, because under the treaties that the United Kingdom signed, the European Union stops us doing that.
And the Prime Minister has already said that Norway's option is not a very good example for Britain if it wants to leave the European Union. Why is that?
I agree with him. We have no intention of doing what Norway has been.
But they already said that Norway, they out of the European Union and they are a very prosperous country. Eurosceptics, Bill Cash, I've interviewed him and he said that Norway is a very good option, example for the EU.
No, Bill Cash agrees with me that there's no way that we wish to have the same deal that Norway has with the European Union. First of all, they belong to the free movement area, whereas I think a lot of British people want to be able to control our own borders again, so we wouldn't in any way accept belonging to the free movement area. Secondly, Norway makes a contribution, I mean, not as big as ours, but it makes a contribution to European Union money. We would see no need for Britain to pay anything to the European Union if we were no longer a member of it. So clearly we will have a better arrangement from the United Kingdom's point of view than Norway does.
But Norway, they've never been part of the European Union, so it's going to damage us more than it damages Norway without being part of the European Union, because they've never been a member of the European Union.
No, Norway wisely decided not to be a member of the European Union. I think Norway is better off than we are at the moment as a full member of the thing. But I think Britain outside the European Union would have a better relationship from Britain's point of view than the Norwegian model. And why did Norway stay out? Well, Norway stayed out because she rightly didn't wish to share her enormously rich fishing grounds with the rest of Europe. Britain did, and we've seen a lot of damage to our fisheries and damage to our fishing industry. And she rightly wanted to keep her own oil and gas, and there was always the danger that in due course there will be a common oil and gas policy, which could still happen.
And which areas do you want to see repatriation of powers from Brussels? In which areas?
I have one very simple request, and that is that whatever matters to the United Kingdom people should be something that their parliament can remedy.
And Mark Carney and also the Prime Minister a few days ago, they hinted that the UK would be worse off if it leaves the European Union. So who are the prominent figures who are going to lead your campaign to leave the EU?
Well, Mr. Carney is a senior official who is currently in charge of the Bank of England Answerable to Parliament. And the report he presided over was actually quite a balanced report. It said that, in his view, there was an advantage in belonging to the EU. He associated the EU with economic dynamism. I don't agree with him, but that was his view. But he said there were a couple of disadvantages of belonging to the European Union, that we were increasingly finding difficult to regulate or not regulate big areas of economic interest to us where EU regulation could be damaging. He was particularly thinking of financial industry, and that we were being drawn into European shocks and crises, as the euro is a turbulent and not very successful currency, and if we're too closely allied, then of course there is damage to us. So I think it was a fairly balanced presentation. Mr. Carney will not be campaigning on either side in the referendum, I shouldn't think, because he is a fully paid public official and has to preserve neutrality. It is, as he rightly said, for the British people to decide whether they wish to restore their democracy or whether they wish to continue on this extraordinary wild ride to political union in the European Union's institutions.
The Prime Minister has already said that he's not going to discuss any major changes with his counterparts, only minor changes. Do you think that is he wrong in doing so?
I don't think that's what the Prime Minister said at all. The Prime Minister said a variety of things on this. We will learn shortly what his latest view of what his demands are. But if you go back to the Bloomberg speech, which is where this whole process started, that was a very fine speech.
A very powerful speech.
I had conversations with him before he made it. I was encouraging him to make a speech like that. I was pleased with the speech he made. And that, you may remember, had two very important characteristics that I fully support. One was it said we need fundamental change in the relationship with the European Union, agree with that. And the second thing was that it said very clearly that the source of authority and accountability in democracy is the national parliament. It can't be the European institutions. Again, I entirely agree. So to me, you follow that through, you have what I'm asking for, which is I want a relationship with the European Union where if something really matters to the British people, they want to control their borders or they don't want to impose a tax, then we should be able to decide it in Westminster.
But don't you think that David Cameron is fooling British people with his renegotiations, as did Harold Wilson in 1975, and he presented his achievements in Brussels as a triumph, but after the referendum we just realised that there were no renegotiations in real terms.
You do keep shifting around. A minute ago you were blaming me for not being friendly enough towards David Cameron, and now you're being very unfair in your criticisms of him. No, there is no evidence that that's what he...
I should be neutral, that's why.
That is what he has done. Yes, you're just contradicting yourself. I don't think that's the definition of neutrality. What he has done so far is to go and talk to his various partners in Europe and say he needs some space and some opportunity to renegotiate. He did that gently, and I don't blame him. He got what he wanted. He's got a working party. He's now got time at the December summit to present the British case. Now he's got to present a very strong British case, and I would encourage him to ask for a lot. And we will see in due course how much he asks for, but you can't start judging what he's got and what his strategy is until we know what his strategy is.
And you've been, now change the subject to the devolution, you've been a strong advocate of English MPs for English laws. So were you relieved when the House voted in favour of the legislation?
Well, I expected the House to do that. I campaigned for some justice for England in the new devolution settlement made necessary by the offer of Gordon Brown and the other two main parties in the Scottish referendum campaign. I was very pleased when the Prime Minister agreed. I was delighted when the Prime Minister from Downing Street the morning after the Scottish referendum result was known said that now it was England's turn to have some justice in a more devolved country. And I fought for that in the general election and was happy to support them when we've implemented part of what is needed to do that. As far as I'm concerned, what we've got is only half of what we need. We now have a system where England can prevent...
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about it. Can I talk later?
They want you on Newsnight.
What?
They want you on Newsnight.
Oh, do they? Oh, okay, fine.
I'll text you the number to call.
I'll ring
as soon as you can.
Well, have you got it written down?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just write it.
I'm just about to finish this anyway, so thank you, lovely. We'll just sort this out. Great stuff. Be good to do that.
Sorry about this.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is important. You're happy about that?
I'm absolutely delighted about it.
Okay.
Because actually, I've got something else I need to do anyway.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm
it's-
in Central Ireland, so it's fine.
Very good. Cheers.
Okay,
Sorry,
thanks. Yeah. So let's pick that up from where we got to. So yes, we decided to go ahead and make sure that the rest of the United Kingdom can't impose a law or a requirement on England that English MPs don't want, so we have the power of veto. But we don't yet have the same power of Scotland to initiate and put through something for England that we want, and I think we may need to go back to that. The next important issue, where I hope England will get more power and a better deal, will lie over the money, because they're currently negotiating a new financial settlement between Scotland and the rest of the Union in the wake of the Scottish referendum, because if Scotland is going to receive her own tax revenues from income tax, then of course she will get less grant, and they have to decide how many functions she will be responsible for herself out of her own finances from her new tax revenues. And at that point, people in England will say, well, we want to have more freedom to choose how to spend English money, just as Scotland is getting more freedom to decide how to spend Scottish money. So I think there will need to be an English block grant or the equivalent, which we will have more control over.
But is this a move towards a federal England to have a second classes of MP in Parliament?
The 4 classes of MP were created by Labour's devolution policies at the end of the last century, because there are different levels of devolution in the 4 countries of the United Kingdom, with England having none and Scotland having the most. And our proposals are trying to get that a bit closer together again. So that's what we're trying to do. But what matters surely is that we have a system which people are happy with. And I hope Scotland will be happy with their enhanced devolution. But the Scottish Nationalists don't seem to be very happy, so we would love to see how that's going to work out.
And now on tax credit cuts, what do you make of government humiliation in the Lords some time ago?
The government has lost a lot of votes in the Lords because the Lords has an inbuilt Labour and Liberal Democrat majority at the moment. I think the Chancellor is exactly right that we want to have higher pay, we want to have lower tax on income, and then you adjust the tax credits, but you should want to leave people better off. And he's agreed to go away and look at the numbers and the pace of change. I think that's the right thing to do. I look forward to assessing his new proposals, which will come forward at the autumn statement. I think that's probably what we've got time for.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.